How do we do it? How do we reconnect to that causeless joy? How do we and it's a very fair question. And I think that the challenge with answering that question is that it's, in my experience anyway, it's not a program, meaning I can't give you the 5 steps. I wish I could. If I could, I would. Now, a lot of people will claim that they have that, they possess that data, that information. But that question is, how do I do the spiritual path? And so it is our own unique way of kneeling and kissing the ground, whether that's through a relational therapy, therapy that goes to the depths, meditation, prayer, being in nature, being a good mommy, being a loving mother. But just to come back down to the ground a little bit, it only happens in a moment, in one moment, in this moment. It's the only time. The question, how do I do it, is only this moment. We can't take care of a future moment, that future moment of dysregulation, of that future moment of the joy being gone, the meaning being gone, the flatness, the numbness, the checked outness, the heartbreak, the shame, the rage. We can't get to that moment. We can't know that moment. We can know this moment. And so this work, all of this happens, all of that happens in this moment. So in this moment, what is it that I'm experiencing? What is the nature of my experience? And this is what the path of the practice of inquiry really is. What is the nature of my experience? And to begin, the way I go about it anyway, is to begin what we call more of a bottom-up approach, meaning we start in the body. What is it that I'm experiencing in the body? And we're so trained to believe that something's missing, like there's something missing from this moment. There's something pulling us into the next moment, because the next moment, that's the one that's going to have the joy. That's the one that's going to have the presence, the peace, the calm, the bliss, the wonder. And so to begin to, as part of our inquiry, to really see this mechanism that's pulling us into the future, that's pulling us into the next moment, that's oriented in that idea, that belief, that it's not a belief, it's like a mind. This is a deep, deep in the collective, that this moment needs to be improved. And I'm not asserting that it doesn't. That's really for you to determine. But I will say that there's a way that being in that place of that improvement of this moment sets up in such an internal struggle. Because if I could just get to the next moment, and you can start to just feel that there's a certain aggression in that. It's a way, it's actually a practice of self-aggression, and a practice unconsciously so, not a judgment or anything, but a practice in a certain way of self-abandonment. And so in each moment, that opportunity, what is it that's being presented? What is it that the soul is wanting me to feel, to see, to know? And this is our, meditation practice. And of course, we have our lives. And as most of you know, I'm sure that you know that I'm a big fan of all of us, if we can, and not all of us can for many reasons, but to be in therapy or to be in some sort of relationship with other peer group, a group of brothers and sisters you can connect with, a spiritual community that, if you can find one, that I won't go off on that. Maybe you can find one that is integrated, that's whole, that has any understanding at all about trauma. And but so we there's so much of this that we just can't do on our own. This solo journey of me being on my meditation cushion, of me being on my yoga mat, all of which is important. But so much of our wounding and so much of the reason that we've become so attuned to detect cues of danger and threat, and the reason that we've lost touch with those unstructured states of consciousness, that all arises out of relational wounding. It all arises out of some version of that inadequate holding environment. Because when we aren't safe, when there's not that empathic attunement, immersion, interest in us as a little being, then our energy is going to have to go to, well, what do I do? How do I do it? What do I do? How do I receive that love? How do I receive that affection? How do I know that joy, that peace, that rest, that wonder, which is the state that we're supposed to be in as a little one and as an older one, by the way. But because those unstructured states of being, which joy is one of them, the kind of joy I'm talking about, meaning it's unproduced. Now, there is other kinds of joy and happiness. I don't really use the word happiness all that much. It's not really my thing. I know that probably sounds weird, but I think it's a bit overrated in a certain way, because I think most of the people that I work with anyway, the longing, if we really get down to the core, there's nothing wrong with happiness. I'm not on a campaign against happiness. I know it must sound crazy, but when we get down to the core of it, most of the people I seem to talk to, that in therapy or in other ways on retreat or whatever, that it's a real longing for meaning that is just, I think, a much more primary sort of motivator that's wired into the human soul is meaning. What is it that's meaningful to me in this life? I might be happy. So, happiness comes and goes, And when it comes, we can take joy. I mean, we can be grateful for that. And when it goes, we could bid it farewell. I hope you return happiness. You have other lands to travel, and I give you my blessing to depart now and for a different quality of the spectrum of consciousness to come. So happiness, I would see, there's, at least the way most people speak about it, is really more of it's not a causeless. If you're talking about just a causeless happiness as sort of a synonym for the joy that I'm talking about, then that's fine. But it happens moment by moment. And the how question is a really honest one. And it's a really understandable one, but that's beyond my pay grade to know what that how is for anyone. But all I can say is that it's becoming aware in that moment, that curiosity, that love, to allow the love of truth, to allow the love of reality, the love of God, to allow that love to have you, to give your life to that, is really the best I think I can do in terms of how. But how do I do that? Well, you have to figure that out and please come back and report.